They will prepare themselves and try to come back. So I want you to work with the VDP that you have installed everywhere, with all the units in advanced position, so that you can continue to intensify their patrol, so that when they have to come back, there is only one thing that awaits them. It is death. We are at this stage.
Something big is happening in Africa. The world might try to ignore it, but Captain Ibrahim Traoré's latest speech made it clear. Africa is at war. It was not the kind of battle with tanks and missiles, but a war for true independence, a war to finally break free from the grip of the West. For too long, African leaders have spoken in cautious words, careful not to upset their former colonizers. But Traoré, he doesn't care about diplomatic pleasantries. His message wasn't about cooperation or compromise. It was about cutting off the West's influence completely. He stood before the people, before his military, and he spoke the truth that many fear to say. The West, especially France, has never left Africa. It has only changed tactics. The days of direct colonial rule may be over, but what remains is far worse: economic slavery, military interference, and political manipulation. Traoré is not asking for small reforms. He is not negotiating. He is declaring war on neocolonialism itself. But what exactly did he say? And more importantly, what does it mean for Africa's future? Here, we would like to take a moment and thank you for supporting us and being a valued part of our strong community. And if you are not yet a member, we encourage you to join us and help build an even stronger community together. Let's get started. Traoré wasted no time in naming the enemy. He made it clear that the West has no reason to be in Africa anymore. Yet they continue to exert control in ways that most people don't even realize. The colonial era may have ended on paper, but in reality, the mechanisms of control have simply evolved. Instead of soldiers marching through African streets with guns, control now comes through financial systems, international organizations, media narratives, and puppet leaders who serve foreign interests instead of their people. He spoke about how the French presence in Africa has always been disguised as assistance, but in reality, it has been a system of pure exploitation. Under the guise of development aid, France has ensured that African nations remain weak, indebted, and dependent. French corporations continue to own and control key industries in many African nations, from mining to telecommunications, ensuring that even the wealth generated on African soil flows back to Paris instead of benefiting the local population. This is why, decades after so-called independence, African economies remain fragile, because the foundation itself was never meant to allow true economic sovereignty. One of the most glaring examples of this control is the CFA franc, a currency controlled by the French treasury, ensuring that former French colonies could never truly control their economies. This monetary system is a relic of colonialism, yet it persists under the illusion of stability. In reality, it strips African nations of the ability to set independent financial policies, devalue their currency when necessary, or build reserves without foreign interference. Every single major economic decision tied to this currency must be approved in Paris, meaning that African nations using the CFA franc do not even have full control over their national wealth. Traoré, like many other African leaders who have resisted this system, understands that as long as Africa does not control its own money, it will never be free. Even with so-called independence, African nations have remained trapped in a cycle of dependence. The illusion of sovereignty is maintained by agreements that favor the former colonial powers. Every year, billions of dollars leave Africa and end up in European banks, ensuring that the continent remains drained of its wealth. French companies operate mines in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, extracting resources at absurdly low costs while selling the same materials at sky-high prices on international markets. Gold, uranium, and oil, resources belong to the African people, yet they are stolen in broad daylight. What should be used to build schools, hospitals, and infrastructure for Africans instead fills the coffers of European conglomerates. This isn't just economic injustice, it is modern-day colonialism. The difference is that instead of colonial governors issuing orders from Africa, Western-backed financial institutions and governments do it from their offices in Paris, Brussels, and Washington. If an African leader dares to challenge this system, they are swiftly punished through economic sanctions, political pressure, or outright coups.
You're going to start a new training cycle, the high-intensity war. It's up to you, military officers. Take this into account. Start preparing for the high-intensity war. I hope I make myself understood. It's not just terrorism. Open your eyes. It's much more than that. It's a decolonization war. And you must have heard these last few days from some generals elsewhere who made us understand that if they fail to come with their armies to recolonize us, they have to come. Well, get ready for the high-intensity war. Either they will come themselves, or they will pass through their local valets who are here to try to disturb our peace. So anyone, I say anyone, whether it's terrorism or any other army that must come to disturb our peace, we must prepare to welcome them in the long term and intensely. That's why I say to you, get ready for the high-intensity war.
Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Traoré also addressed the hypocrisy of Western military involvement in Africa. France, along with other Western powers, claims to be fighting insurgency on the continent. Yet, despite their presence, insurgency has only grown. This is no coincidence. Western military operations often operate in parallel with the looting of African resources. The areas with the most natural wealth, gold mines, oil fields, and uranium deposits, also tend to be the areas most affected by conflict. It is as if war follows resources, creating chaos that conveniently prevents African nations from developing independently. When Mali expelled the French military, insurgent attacks decreased. When Niger took control of its security, the situation improved. This raises a critical question. Was France fighting insurgency, or was it using insurgency as an excuse to keep its military in Africa? The evidence suggests the latter. Time and time again, leaked reports and testimonies have revealed that the very groups Western forces claim to be fighting are often armed and funded through networks linked to foreign intelligence operations. The longer instability continues, the longer Western forces have a reason to remain. Burkina Faso has seen firsthand what happens when a country refuses to be controlled. The moment Traoré rejected France, the Western world turned against him. Sanctions were discussed, media narratives shifted, and suddenly he was being painted as an authoritarian leader. This is a well-documented strategy. The West does not tolerate independent African leadership. Any African leader who challenges Western dominance is either overthrown, assassinated, or turned into a villain. The same happened to Thomas Sankara, Muammar Gaddafi, to Patrice Lumumba. Each of these leaders sought to liberate their people from foreign control. Each of them understood that true independence required cutting the economic and military chains that kept Africans subservient, and each of them paid the ultimate price. Traoré understands this history, and unlike past leaders, he is preparing for what comes next. Traoré's speech wasn't just a call to remove the West, it was a warning. The fight for independence will not be easy, because the enemy is not just external. Africa's greatest battles have always been fought on multiple fronts. There are obvious threats, such as foreign militaries and economic sabotage, but the more dangerous attacks come from within. The West does not always send its armies marching into African capitals. Instead, it plants the seeds of division, nurtures internal discord, and watches as nations collapse from within. Every time an African leader has tried to resist, the West has found a way to turn their people against them. The methods are well documented and devastatingly effective. First, political destabilization, funding opposition groups that are willing to sabotage their own country for foreign backing. Then, arming rebel movements under the guise of freedom fighters ensures that any attempt at national unity is met with internal strife. When that fails, economic warfare begins, crippling a nation's currency, restricting trade, and suffocating its economy until desperation turns the people against their government. These tactics have been used for decades, from the assassination of Patrice Lumumba in Congo to the endless destabilization efforts in Libya, Zimbabwe, and beyond. Traoré understands this, which is why he spoke directly to his military, urging them to prepare for every kind of attack. Not just physical warfare, but information warfare, economic warfare, and political subversion. A government that does not control its narrative is already half defeated. Colonialism did not end when African nations lowered the European flags. It evolved. Now it moves through institutions, through the media, through carefully controlled dissent. If an African leader rises against Western interests, he is labeled a dictator. If he cooperates with the West, he is branded a progressive reformer. The message is clear. Sovereignty is acceptable only when it aligns with foreign interests.
And we are going to follow these trainings. We will move on to other groups to intensify the operations and try to pacify. These are the steps. And this terrorism will be defeated, because they know that it will be defeated, that they are preparing, either locally here, or to come with their armies to fight us. Well, we are going to prepare to welcome them.
One of the most effective tools used by the West is the manipulation of public perception. Western-backed media outlets control the narratives that shape how the world sees Africa. They decide which leaders are called dictators and which are praised as democratic. They use their influence to spread false information, to weaken support for revolutionary movements, and to create divisions between nations that should be allies. It is no coincidence that leaders like Gaddafi and Sankara, who sought true independence, were demonized, while those who kept Africa chained to Western interests were celebrated in international media. Today, the same tactic is being used against Traoré. He is not just fighting foreign influence, he is fighting a war of narratives, where perception can be more powerful than bullets. Then comes economic pressure. The moment a nation steps out of line, the West imposes sanctions. This isn't about punishing governments. It's about punishing the people until they lose faith in their leaders. It's a strategy that has been used against Zimbabwe, Iran, and now Russia. When direct invasion isn't possible, starvation and economic destruction become the next weapons. The goal is simple: make life unbearable for the citizens, force them to blame their government, and create internal opposition that never needed to exist in the first place. This is why Traoré's strategy is not just about military defense. It is about economic resilience. He understands that a nation reliant on Western financial systems is a nation already compromised. Burkina Faso is already facing these threats, and Traoré is making sure that his country is ready. He is strengthening ties with neighboring nations, forming alliances that cannot be broken by Western interference. He is reducing dependence on foreign aid so that Burkina Faso is not vulnerable to financial blackmail. And most importantly, he is ensuring that his people understand the real enemy. He knows that without unity, Africa will always be easy to control. No empire has ever ruled by force alone. It has ruled by dividing, by making a nation believe that it is its enemy. Traoré's greatest challenge is not just expelling foreign powers, but ensuring that his people do not unknowingly become the West's greatest weapon against their liberation. Perhaps the most powerful part of Traoré's speech was his call for unity. He wasn't just speaking to soldiers or politicians, he was speaking to the people, the farmers, the workers, the youth in the streets, the elders who have seen history repeat itself. He understands that Burkina Faso's military alone cannot win this battle. Weapons, strategy, and leadership are important, but they mean nothing if the people do not stand behind them. The real power lies with the citizens. If the people believe in the fight, then no force on earth can stop them. A government can be sanctioned, an army can be blockaded, but a nation that has awakened to its strength can never be defeated. The West has always relied on division. It's how they conquered Africa in the first place. They didn't arrive as an unstoppable force. They arrived as manipulators. They studied the local dynamics, identified tribal tensions, and turned African warriors against each other. They promised one group power if they betrayed another. They drew artificial borders, forcing different nations into unnatural unions while tearing apart communities that had coexisted for centuries. And when direct rule ended, they refined their methods. They replaced colonial governors with economic control and military partnerships, and handpicked African leaders who served foreign interests. And they are still doing it today. They fund opposition parties, arm rebel groups, and spread propaganda that makes Africans distrust their governments. A nation at war with itself is a nation easy to control.
Thank you very much for all the work. everything that could be improved, which concerns the conditions of combat first, but also the working conditions, we will make the effort. More than ever now, you make one with the population. This is all we are looking for, the armed nation link. Continue to keep this flame of unity with the civilian population, so that they can support you. Because it is thanks to them that we can fight today. It is the people who understood. If the people had not understood, we could not equip you like that. It is not possible. But the people understood, they got involved, and we are making a lot of effort so that the operational capacity only increases. So congratulations, a lot of courage, and good luck for your future missions. And thank you very much to all. Thank you.
This is why unity is Traoré's greatest weapon. It is not just about political unity or military cooperation. It is about a deep, unshakable understanding that Africa's struggles are interconnected. He is calling for a unity that cannot be bought, a unity that does not dissolve at the first sign of hardship. He knows that the West will attempt to break this unity, just as they have done in the past. They will whisper to the people that their leaders have betrayed them. They will use their media to spread stories of failure, corruption, and instability. They will pressure neighboring countries to isolate Burkina Faso, to cut off trade, and to weaken the economy. And they will wait. They will wait for the people to break, to turn against their government, to beg for Western intervention. This is the cycle that has played out time and time again, and Traoré is determined to stop it. He called on civilians to support their military, to resist Western propaganda, and to stand firm even when times get tough. This is not a battle of weeks or months. It is a war of endurance. There will be economic hardships. There will be food shortages, blackouts, and rising prices. There will be voices, both foreign and domestic, saying that resistance is foolish and that the old order must return. And there will be temptations, offers of loans, foreign aid, and diplomatic help that will come with invisible chains. Traoré warned the people that this moment will come. And when it does, their greatest strength will not be in their leaders but in their collective will. If they stand together, if they see this struggle as their own, then victory is not just possible, it is inevitable. African history has shown that people's movements are the most powerful force of change. From the independent struggles of the 1960s to the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, real change has always come when the people refused to submit. It was not a foreign intervention that liberated Ghana, Guinea, or Tanzania. It was the people themselves. It was the mass protests, the strikes, and the sacrifices of everyday citizens that broke colonial rule. It was the defiance of Black South Africans, their refusal to accept oppression, that dismantled apartheid. No empire can stand against a population that has collectively decided that it will no longer be ruled. And that is what Traoré is calling for now. Not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. He is urging Africans to see this not as a Burkina-based struggle, but as an African struggle. What is happening in Burkina Faso today is what happened in Guinea under Sékou Touré, in Libya under Gaddafi, and in Congo under Lumumba. It is the same fight, the fight for self-determination, for control over African wealth, and for the right to choose Africa's future without interference. If one country stands alone, it can be crushed. But if Africa is united, then the old colonial masters will have no choice but to leave. If Burkina Faso resists, and Mali, Niger, Guinea, and other nations resist alongside them, the empire will have no ground left to stand on. Traoré's call to unity is not just rhetoric, it is strategy. It is survival. A divided Africa is an enslaved African. A united Africa is unstoppable. And that is why the West fears unity more than any weapon, more than any army. It is why they spend billions funding divisions, rewriting history, and controlling narratives. But history is moving forward. A new generation of Africans is awakening. And if they answer Traoré's call, then this moment will not just be another chapter of resistance, it will be the beginning of Africa's liberation. So, is Africa ready for war? This is no longer just about Burkina Faso. It is about the future of the entire continent. Traoré knows that what he is doing is dangerous. He knows that history is filled with leaders who tried and failed. But he also knows that this is Africa's last chance. If the West is not stopped now, then neocolonialism will last another 100 years. The real question isn't whether Traoré is ready. The real question is whether Africa is ready. Ready to fight, ready to resist, ready to finally take control of its future. If this speech proves anything, it is that the battle has already begun. So will Africa rise, or will history repeat itself? Do you think anyone can stop Traoré? Let us know in the comment section. Will Africa finally unite? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.